Welcome one and all, I'm Scrap Metal, and today I'm here to start sharing a little project I've been working on. Around a year ago, I was sitting around in a coma-like state and was suddenly in the mood to watch anime. Being a 30-year-old man, it's become more difficult to find something I would enjoy watching. The highs of exceptional series like Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood or Erase, series that I highly enjoyed, really changed my standards and made me kind of a snob. A lot of the general anime tropes have a way of grading, especially if nothing new or interesting is being brought to the table. Step by step, that led to me not even bothering to open videos. After a session or two of going through the entire catalog on Crunchyroll and saying things like, don't feel like it, no, God no, and who would even watch this, I once again wound up watching nothing. It came to me mostly as a joke one day as I told my roommates, I'm going to watch an episode of every anime on Crunchyroll in alphabetical order. The response from my roommates, who would also be subjected to this torture, was along the lines of, that's a bad idea, but okay. A year later, with a lack of truly dedicated effort, I'm sitting around the E's and there's a few things I've realized. First, there's a lot of anime on Crunchyroll. Second, there's a lot of bad anime on Crunchyroll. Third, and most surprisingly, there's some definite shows I didn't expect to like that really caught my attention. If someone told me I'd like the anime about girls taking a trip to Antarctica, I wouldn't have disbelieved them, but that's because at that point I would have had actual direct recommendation of the show. It'd take the show from being just an icon, a name, and a brief description to something I had been assured has some value, and even then, I'm not sure if I actually would sit down and watch it at any point. That's the thing. There's a lot of animes, and at a certain point, it all just starts blending together. You pass up watching a series that didn't catch your interest because you just didn't have the time to take the risk on a sister's all you need, and really it's not your style. It's not my style either, but oddly enough, I do recommend watching A Sister's All You Need. At least the beginning segment, at least, is an outright parody of the expected content that I was worried about. And after a while, I started wanting to share my journey and keeping a log of the series I've seen so I can tell people what I recommend and what I really don't recommend. So, that's the general intro out of the way. Let's get to talking about how I'm going to review these animes. The actual amount I'm watching for each series depends on what kind of series it is. For general anime, I'm only watching one episode. It has that long to catch my attention. No, it's not the most fair, and as a general rule of thumb, I typically watch 3 episodes of any new show before to truly get a feel for the show. But there's a lot of shows to get through here, and honestly, a lot of them don't deserve 3 episodes of my time. For shorter animes of runtimes around 5 minutes, we'll be watching 2 episodes to see if something about their style clicks. For movies, we'll watch 15 minutes and come to my judgment with that. As it would be madness to just out of the gate create this kind of video as one complete package, we'll be doing it in parts. We're going to be going in alphabetical order, but starting with numericals. There's not a lot of shows in this list here, so I think it'll work for a good first video. You know that feeling when you're making New Year's resolutions and making a big list of things to improve your life? Things that you're definitely going to do this time, and then the very first thing on the list is to work out every day. Well, 07 Ghost is the first item on my list, and boy do I not have a lot to say about it. There's going to be shows like this throughout the process that are just really not that notable, and it's a bit of a pain that we're starting out with one here. For this project, I'm skimming the first episode of a lot of shows that I watched a year ago, and wouldn't you know it, this one still does not leave an impact. The initial impressions of the show feel like a generic early 2000s battle anime, and we get a few battle scenes where characters use the power of words and dark donuts to punch at each other. Really, there's not too much of note to say here. The most entertaining thing I found in this show is the name of the main character being Tato, and where he decided to sit. Overall, it seems like it could be fine if you're looking to dive into a more generic anime of the era, but for me it's a pass. 100% Teacher Pascal is the next anime in the list here. It's a goofy little comedy anime that seems to be targeted at younger kids, but seems to understand how to tell a joke. The story's simple enough, showing a classroom filled with hijinks when a weird yellow orb creature shows up to teach the class after the previous teacher left for a more lucrative career. I can feel that, Mr. Teacher. Overall, the first episode is only 12 minutes long, but they make the most out of their time with a decent pace that keeps throwing out the jokes. I probably won't watch more of it, but I think it's a fine show that a younger audience could definitely get into. I'm giving 100% Teacher Pascal both a not my style and recommended tag. If you're looking for some light humor, you could do worse than this. It's just not personally my thing. Within 19 seconds, we have what looks to be an 8-year-old being stabbed through the chest by a stand user of some kind. That brings us to 11 Eyes. The name probably related to the main character Kakaru, who wears an eye patch so ornate it would be impossible for him not to be the main character. The plot seems fairly standard first episode action, battle, possibly harem anime. Main character who's sitting on a roof goes home with some friends, then falls into an alternate world where he gets attacked by shadows. Obvious persona comparisons aside, it's at this point where I'm going to get sidetracked in my review. It took 3 shows, but we've reached the first anime where I have to talk about an issue that crops up fairly often. Today's issue is panty shots. Even when I was younger, I never liked panty shots. They felt creepy and unnecessary, and those feelings have only strengthened as I got older. I will be fairly harsh and mention when an anime offends my prudish sensibilities in this regard. What you do with that information is between you and whatever god you've chosen to abandon. Now, back to 11 Eyes specifically. The anime does have a few panty shots here in the first episode. They're not the worst I've seen, but there's still just a number of scenes where the camera pans too low for no reason. It didn't take every chance it could have taken to do those, and it didn't do them in the brief action scenes here, so I'm gonna give it just 2 sins out of 5. Overall, it might be a fine anime, but it really doesn't do anything in the first episode to stand out for me, so I'm just gonna give it a pass. Now we're getting into one of the first sports animes we're going to talk about. As a preface here, I'm not a big fan of sports, and anime or otherwise, so I'm pretty biased. That said, there's a few on Crunchyroll that did actually catch my attention for being higher quality. On to 2.43 Seiyan High School Boys Volleyball Team. Bit of a mouthful there, but we haven't even gotten to the isekais yet, so I'll manage for now. Getting into it, the animation quality is decent, and it seems to know things about volleyball. Okay, this is clearly not my niche, so we're just going to quickly hit the story beats I found interesting. A normal issue in the sports animes for me is an extreme passion for the sport that I can't really empathize with. It's not them, it's me. The basic plotline of the show is about 2 people that used to be friends but were separated, and then who finally get to meet many years later and happen to share an interest in volleyball. The problems lie in the fact that one person is openly casual about the sport, and the other is the type to be really into sports and really be angry about it. The interesting thing to me about the show is that it seems to have an interest in exploring a character's toxic behavior, where maybe the lesson he needs to learn is to enjoy the sport, or something like that. Obviously, I only watched 1 episode of the anime, so I'm just hopeful it would explore those kind of plot points, but for me, I'd be much more interested in watching a journey about a character trying to find a healthy love of the game rather than just showing some people playing and winning at some sports. Overall, I'm going to give this one a not my style and recommended badge. There's probably only a handful of sports animes that will spark enough interest in me to watch further, but this one was close. Here we have 22/7 Nanabun no Nijuni. No promises I actually said that correct, but this is our first idol anime, and it's actually surprisingly interesting. At first, the anime seems fairly standard as we follow the main character through her gloomy everyday life with the implication of soon-to-be acquired fame hanging overhead. She gets a weird invitation for a job and meets up with all the other girls invited for this same opportunity. We get absolutely slammed with a parade of characters and personalities to the point where you just kind of start zoning out as another character appears one after another. This isn't unusual for this type of anime where they really focus on front-loading the cast, but for someone watching the first episode of a lot of shows like me, it doesn't really leave an impact. What does leave an impact is after this point the show really starts getting weird. The girls are taken to a large underground facility that is filled with gyms, recording rooms, generally things that would probably be optimal for training idols, and then they are taken even further down underground in an elevator that leads to a sitting room that belongs in a Roman palace, where they are introduced to the Wall. The Wall, of course, is some kind of mysterious entity. It occasionally rolls out orders, and orders are to be followed absolutely. The Wall rolled out orders to collect these 8 girls and make them into idols. The girls are informed that they are to sit here and wait for orders from the almighty Wall. Did I mention the elevator back up doesn't have a control panel of any kind, so it's implied the girls can't leave unless the Wall or facility allow it? Now, let's take a moment here for a public service announcement. If you see a situation this sketchy, get out. There is something deeply wrong here. You are not an anime protagonist and a cult is after you. Back in anime land, we ask ourselves what a reasonable person would do next. And surprisingly, the main character shows sanity and wants to immediately leave. She takes off as she's informed that even if she leaves, she will be back because the Wall wills it. After this, she gets fired from her job and we get to follow her as she finds she has no options but to return to the Wall, as she grimly goes on about this bitch of an earth like a grizzled veteran. Overall, I'm at a loss, honestly. I'm not sure what direction this anime plans to take. I honestly believe it'll go in a less interesting direction for me, showing the trials and tribulations of an idol, but man, what a bizarre first episode. I don't deny the potential here for it to do something actually interesting. I'm gonna give it an optimistic recommend. I'm hopeful that it keeps doing interesting things in further episodes, and I might watch a few more just to question what's going on with the all-knowing Wall. The next show we'll be turning our attention to is 8 Man After, an older anime about Itsuru Hazama, a hardened private detective who picks up chicks and then doesn't let them out of his car. The premise of the show comes about near the end of the episode where we watch the main character fight off an assailant but get critically wounded. We watch as he gets the RoboCop treatment and then deals with a hostage situation through sheer unwillingness to play along. The animation's actually pretty good for the era, showing off a lot of action, and we get a decent amount of characterization for a first episode here. Overall, I think it's a fine show that I just don't have a strong interest in. I'm going to give it a not my style, but recommended tag as well. If you're interested in watching an older anime, you could do much worse than this. Alright, we're making some decent progress, but the video's starting to take a bit too long. Let's try to speed this up a bit. Now, what's the next anime in the list? Oh. Well, it's not like I have a life anyway. Let's get into it. Here we have 86, an anime about a war between robotic autonomous killing machines and the remainder of mankind. The people who actually fight this war are called the 86, who are pretty much anyone who has colored hair and are not part of the pure ethnicity. Yeah, okay, so it's really hard to talk about 86 without touching on the fact that the show is heavily about racism and the message that it's bad. I want to be clear here, this isn't a problem for me, though it does feel a little heavy-handed in the first half where we follow Vladilena Maliz, one of the members of the Republic. We get to see the side of the society that talks about how the war is going well because there's no casualties. This is because the 86 who pilot the metal death machines do not count as human. I think the first half does honestly drag on a bit, but the show catches my interest near the end where we change to look at the lives of the 86 who are the true focus of the show. We get to see a bit of their happy daily lives before we suddenly shift to a view of a dirty, bloody battlefield. The tone shift is extremely well done to be jarring and really get a feel for the duality of these characters' lives. The happy moments have an underlying sadness as we see the characters return to their cheerful lives after a day on the battleground. Overall, the anime feels like it has promise, and the brief exchange we see on the battlefield in the first episode does seem interesting. Things are beautifully animated, and the sound is on point to fit the scene. I'm giving this a flat recommended as there's definite potential here. Now that the episode 1 review is out of the way, we're actually going to take a moment here and shift to something I'm calling an extended review. This is going to be done for animes that I've watched more of to give further impressions and see how they matched up against my episode 1 estimates. I suppose it's not really in the theme of a video about judging anime by their first episode, but my real goal is to bring to light anime that I might have passed up on if I had not started this project. 86 is an extremely good example of this, as I might have flipped past the anime many times in passing, never giving it a chance it deserves, and it definitely deserves the chance. Having watched the full show, I have to say that it is fantastic. The show stays interesting and has a way of pulling you into caring about the characters and the events that are happening. The sound designs are well done and seem to be masterfully crafted to pull tears out of you. The transitions between scenes are really top-notch here, jarring you from happy days to the middle of a war zone. The show is gritty and engaging, and it hurt me on many levels. For the extended review, I'm bumping 86 up to a highly recommend. It is an amazing show, and I think it alone makes this project worth it. 91 Days is a mafia revenge drama that takes place during the Prohibition era in the United States. The anime starts out like any good revenge story by showing us a happy household with a loving family. Then you follow it up by killing most of the family as you make the main character watch. Time skips 7 years, and boom, now you have the Punisher. The story has nice pacing, moving the plot along but taking the moments it needs to slow down to show the important events in more detail. The first episode works well to introduce the characters we'll be interacting with without letting it take away from the momentum. If what you're after is a revenge story that gives a look into the Prohibition era, then here's an option for you. I'm going to give 91 Days a recommend. It seems like a good show, even if I don't have much specific to say about it. Alright, and with that we finally finished up with all the animes that begin with a number and who put this here? Oh, well, I thought we were leaving off on a positive note, but I can see that's not happening. If a friend were to ask me for a trash tier show to watch, I'd not recommend this to them, as I don't hate my friends. Dogeza I Tried Asking While Katoing is a sexual harassment anime. I'm not even kidding, there's literally nothing else to this show. You watch you, the protagonist, beg a girl on hands and knees to reveal themselves for 3 minutes, and eventually the girl gives up and agrees to it. That's it. That's the show. This is one of those shows that make me ashamed to say I watch anime. I'm giving this anime maximum sin values because I feel actual disgust from it. I'm rating this as trash and am now a little more bitter at the world. So, that's everything in the first section here. It's been a learning process for me, as this is the first video I've edited and worked with, and I think my skills are generally improved. And I'm starting to get a sense for the style I want to go for. I'm still going to release this video as a kind of prototype while I iron out the remaining details, and I'll probably leave it up as a legacy for the first video I truly created. I would love it if people told me in the comments what they think of my video and any changes you might like to see in my reviews here. And now the time's come for a little self-promotion. Here I am to ask people to like and subscribe the video if you liked it and would like to see more of it. It does mean a great deal to me, and I'd love to be able to keep directing efforts to this and other projects. You can also catch me as scrap_metal on twitch.tv, and I'd love to talk to people over there as well. Yeah, that seems to be about it. For everyone who made it to the end of the video, I definitely appreciate it. I know there's a lot of content everywhere on the internet, but you wound up here on my door, and that's amazing to me. I really hope to see you next time.